by the way, it's also breaking down against gold. And to me, again, this is something like no Bitcoiner's been able to answer well. And the answer might just be, well, it's about to turn up. But the fact is this is the first time in Bitcoin cycle that it has not beaten gold on a 5-year basis. There's no 5-year period in the history of Bitcoin that Bitcoin has not outperformed gold. You can't find it until the last 5 years. I think that's why Saylor built a dollar reserve. I think he sees that same dollar tender, or that same tender that could go the other way. Because look, the Treasury company thing, it's no longer Michael Saylor alone. That's been a huge source of marginal supply. What happens if the economy turns down in a way as a result of something that the Fed is not immediately addressing that leads to some of that being liquidated? I don't know. Like I said before, there's a lot of things sort of blending around that any one of which could cause a real problem. And in the meantime, I figure, you know what? Why not transfer it from Bitcoin into a Bitcoin-like asset? So I paid off the lake house. So now I've got, 2 paid off houses. Lake houses are very different than regular houses as it relates to how they trade and the valuation relative to Bitcoin.
There is a specific type of asset that functions like physical Bitcoin. It's finite, it's controlled, and it's desirable. For our strategist, that was a private lakefront lot. The logic here is tactical. In 2021, the Federal Reserve, under Jerome Powell, handed out a gift in the form of dirt-cheap, long-term fixed-rate mortgages. Many investors use that cheap debt to stay levered in Bitcoin. But as the market matured and Bitcoin hit new highs, the Uptown Problem emerged. When your winner becomes nearly half of your net worth, you have a choice. Stay all in on digital code, or transfer that wealth into a debt-free physical world asset. Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space, and drop your comments and observations in the comment section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
So, I first bought Bitcoin in 2013. So I've owned it for a long time. And, I sold some to start FFTT. That worked out fine. Then I bought a bunch more back and owned more than I'd ever owned before. And then I sold most of it in 2021, pay off my mortgage. I had put sort of all my chips into the table for FFTT. I wanted to get debt free. Got debt free. Found a lake house I liked, bought a lake house, took out another mortgage. Thank you, Powell. Got a dirt cheap mortgage. For not that many Bitcoin, right? Because, or for a decent amount of Bitcoin, effectively, right? Because I bought it in, I don't know, I guess I bought it in third quarter of 21, maybe something like that. And I just look at a lakefront lot as a physical world Bitcoin, right? There's only so many lakefront lots. There's only so many private lakefront lots on a private lake, where you have a control over who's on your lake. And I had a big mortgage and, low fixed rate, added a bunch of Bitcoin, bought a lot of Bitcoin under 30,000. So much so that my position was bigger than it had ever been. Let it ride, didn't touch it, didn't trade around it. And found by this summer that it was, 45% of my liquid net worth. I look at that. I look at what I'm seeing in the world where, look, I don't know what's going to happen. And maybe it will all, in some sort of, magical pool ball trick shot work out without any problems. But like I said before, there's a lot of things sort of blending around that any one of which could cause a real problem. And in the meantime, I figure, you know what? Why not transfer it from Bitcoin into a Bitcoin-like asset? So I paid off the lake house. So now I've got, 2 paid off houses. Lake houses are very different than regular houses as it relates to how they trade and the valuation relative to Bitcoin. And, to get a little philosophical, like, why do we do this, right? People say, well, Bitcoin's finite and that's fine. My time's finite. And, I don't have a mortgage now in a place where I can sit on the dock and watch the sun set into the water. I love watching the sun set into the water. How many more sunsets do any of us have? None of us know, with, my bride, with a bottle of wine, with my sons, great relationship, sit on the dock, right? So would I rather, then I look at all of that. I look at, okay, seems to me things could get a little messy here in the first half of the year. And then, for me, tactically, it was just looking at these technicals, these longer term technicals, which, whether you look at things like true strength index, whether you look at moving average convergence, divergence, I don't look at them short term. I'm not a short term trader. I look at these long term technicals. And that's all. I just want to know like the long term picture, a monthly chart. And on monthly charts, these momentum indicators, like they've only turned down 4 times in the past 12 years. They the 2014 down cycle, the 2018 down cycle, the 22 down cycle, and in October. And I didn't catch it right at October, and that's okay. I tend to like to see proof of it. I don't like right when it gets there, okay, I'm out. But when you sort of look at all the picture, I'm like, okay, given where it is, the Uptown Problem of it's now 45% of my liquid net worth. It's been a freaking huge winner, probably the biggest winner I had in my career in a position. I have a chance to wipe out a mortgage. I put it into a Bitcoin-like asset there. I buy some gold with it because, oh, by the way, it's also breaking down against gold. And to me, again, this is something like no Bitcoiner's been able to answer well. And the answer might just be, well, it's about to turn up. But the fact is this is the first time in Bitcoin cycle that it has not beaten gold on a 5-year basis. There's no 5-year period in the history of Bitcoin that Bitcoin has not outperformed gold. You can't find it until the last 5 years. And I'm not smart enough to know why that is, but I've been doing this for 30 years. And when there's something that you think you know really well, and then a relationship changes, when you have a divergence in macro, it's the rule changes where that you have to really pay attention to. Now, if I had 5% of my net worth, 10% in my liquid net worth in Bitcoin, would I pay as much attention to it? Probably not. But 45%, you better be darn sure you understand why the heck Bitcoin hasn't outperformed gold for a 5-year period for the first time in Bitcoin's lifetime. And I haven't found anyone who's been able to explain it to me. So when you lay those things all out, my view is, look, for the moment, Bitcoin's breaking down versus gold. I sold it, what I sold at 23, 24 ounces of gold. It's at 19. Maybe it's back to 20 or 21 today. That's fine. I'm now sitting on 2 houses mortgage free. Thank you to Bitcoin and thank you to Jerome Powell for buying mortgages well beyond when he should have been buying mortgages. I appreciate that. And I've got some liquidity. The other thing too is some of it is sitting in liquidity, which is, I'm sitting probably 25% cash and T-bills right now. Cause that's how much I don't know. And people say, well, oh, why would you do that? Well, why don't all the Bitcoiners that are beating on me? Why don't you call up Michael Saylor and go, how come you're raising $1 reserve, Mr. Saylor? I ain't doing anything different than he is. And let the Bitcoiners, I got Joe Rando Bitcoiner kicking the crap out of me on, which is great. It's fine. It's hilarious, whatever. So that's kind of the thought process to it around all of it. And like I said, I still own some Bitcoin. It's still, it's just a lot less than it used to be. Until those technicals broke down, I really believed it was okay. And we're just about now, it's going to start trading like a neutral reserve asset. Now it's going to, and I watch, and it didn't. It's not. And, you look at, it's trading like levered NASDAQ. Well, look at levered NASDAQ against China tech. China tech quietly starting to beat the NASDAQ. What happens if Chinese tech starts to pull flows from the NASDAQ and Bitcoin keeps trading like again, would I care if it's 5-10% position? No. Of my liquid net worth? No, don't care. 45%? Yeah, you better care. Because you say, well, I'm just going to hold. Well, how long? Bitcoin hasn't outperformed gold for 5 years. Is 5 years the right amount of time? Is it 10? Is it 12? I don't know. I'm just basically saying, okay, I'll sit back. I'll wait and see. And look, if I'm wrong and the technicals say, oops, it's a new bull market. Yeah, I'm going to have to buy back in at probably 115. So what? Okay, that's okay. That's for me, an acceptable risk reward relative to, because the fact is too, it's a much more institutional product now. And I don't, Bitcoiners, a lot of Bitcoiners, you can talk around me like crazy, and like you guys have forgotten more about the technological aspects of Bitcoin than I'll ever know. But the one thing I feel like I have an advantage on against a lot of Bitcoiners is I've been consulting with institutional investors for 30 years. And from a marginal bid standpoint, they pay attention to these things like some of these longer term technicals and stuff. And they're short term and long term. But when the long term technicals look like this, like they're not going to be a big rush to be like, oh, my mind has changed and now I'm going to bid it from 90 to 150 over 2 months. Something big has to change. It would have to be some sort of major liquidity event. And I just don't think that liquidity event's coming in the next, couple of months. And again, I could be totally wrong. So, do your own due diligence. But that's kind of the thought process of where, when you total it all up, why I did what I did. The way I think about it, is you have to look where sort of the source of marginal supply. Where's the source of leverage? The source of marginal supply. People would have to sell price insensitive, and then the catalyst for that, right? And then it's, what percentage of the Bitcoin community is thinking about these risks? And then of that percentage, what percentage odds are they placing on those things happening? And there's no scientific way of knowing that. But again, having a big X following, you at least get some sort of, Texas hedge guesstimate of that.
Most Bitcoiners look at 1 hour or 1 day charts. They trade the noise. But institutional consultants look at monthly momentum. On the monthly charts, the True Strength Index and the MACD are heavy. These long-term momentum indicators have only turned down 4 times in the last 12 years.
I think Bitcoiners are not putting any weight on what's happening in things like JGBs. I think they're putting no weight on what would happen to capital flows in the US in the case of an outbreak of war. I think they're putting almost no weight on a renewal of trade war with China. All of these things would be bad for Bitcoin in the short run. I think they are putting no weight on what would happen if, as a result of some sort of sustained, not even sustained, several month long, one of those things, look, some treasury companies having to unwind positions to maintain cash positions. Because let's face it, if you've borrowed money to buy Bitcoin, you don't own the Bitcoin, the bank does. And the bank has no interest in Bitcoin, they have interest in dollars. And that's just a fact. And that's a source. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just looking at the setup of the system and saying that is a potential source of indiscriminate selling, trying to get dollars. That is dry tinder. I think that's why Saylor built a dollar reserve. I think he sees that same dollar tinder, or that same tinder that could go the other way. Because look, the treasury company thing, it's no longer Michael Saylor alone. That's been a huge source of marginal supply. What happens if the economy turns down in a way as a result of something that the Fed is not immediately addressing that leads to some of that being liquidated? I don't know. But I do know that it's not being priced in Bitcoin at all right now, because from what I can tell, Bitcoiners just aren't talking about it. Like you would be, you get screamed down at X. I do know that if you even try to say anything about that. Not my base case. The other thing is, look, I don't know what I don't know on, on some of the quantum stuff. And that's not why I sold. But I've also been doing this a long time. And I know if you have a 45% position and you don't know something that could have a huge outsized impact, 45% is too big. And so, look, yeah, they've been talking about it forever. Is it FUD? Yeah, it probably is FUD. Where it started factoring into my thought process when people in the Bitcoin community who I really respect and who are huge Bitcoin advocates going, look, guys, this is still probably nothing, but this was 0 nothing. And now it's something more than 0 nothing. And it has the chance to increase meaningfully. We don't know. Especially in light of what we were talking about before with AI and the exponentials. Right? Everybody thinks they have more time and they don't. And, everyone's like, well, this is going to solve cancer in 2 years. Well, maybe. What if it does something else? Like, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, but I do know my position is way too big relative to what I don't know. So something like that, whether it's actual or just something that gets closer. Like, what happens if it comes out in 3 months that, hey, it isn't 9 years, it's 2 years, and we're pretty sure it's 2 years? That ain't gonna make Bitcoin go up. Full stop. You and I both know that. Now, I think it could be a great buying opportunity, because I do think the Bitcoin community would pull together, and there's ways, those types of things. But there hasn't been this deleveraging, right? This isn't sort of, quantum's going to get us, as, what's his name on Rogan is saying, it's going to zero. That it's going to zero is not the sentiment right now on Bitcoin. So where could it go? Some of that depends on those kinds of things. There are, ways it could get, a lot lower, like it did. Like, perfect example, last cycle, it's never gone below the prior cycle high. Well, guess what, kiddies? Sure did last time, right? It's never gone down in the third year of a cycle. Guess what, kiddies? It just did, didn't it? So there's some things, it's never lost to gold in any 5-year stretch. It just did. As of right about now, right? If you look at the chart 5 years ago now versus 5 years ago. So I don't know what I don't know. And that's, for me, was like, okay, for my positioning, more importantly for my clients' positioning, I've been a big advocate of Bitcoin. It would be irresponsible for me as a fiduciary not to highlight as a someone who's been very vocally advocating it. Like, look, there are some risks here that, I don't know what I don't know. And for me, here's what I'm doing. Kind of a thought. I think it would be events, price, time, right? So, and events can be, hey, something happened and the price fell. Events can be, hey, something happened and the price didn't fall when it should have fallen, and maybe I'm wrong. Time can just be, look, maybe it, you go back in time. Do you remember the memes about, oh my God, it's at 19 or it's at 58, right? There were like, there were memes and what have you around, it's just trading at 58. Trading at 58, it's never going to go over 58, right? Maybe it just needs to trade at 90 for a year and a half, or for a year. And that will, that type of passage of time will start to paint different pictures in terms of technicals, et cetera, to institutions, longer term investors, et cetera. An event. Look, to me, it was just so obvious when SBF was blowing up with FTX. It's like, okay, here's the blood in the streets, right? You had a pretty famous person who was a little out of their wheelhouse talking about how it was going to zero on Joe Rogan, right? Like at 16, right? It's gone from 70 to 16 and it's going to zero. As SBF is like, it's blowing up and FTX, like that to me was one of the most obvious, by the way, the people that are like, oh, you're the dumbest person alive and you're never going to buy it back. Those all people are going like, why do I own this thing? So some of it is, price, time, event, sentiment. One of the advantages of having as many X followers as I do is it's a really useful real-time indicator on sentiment, right? You can sort of throw some chum in the water and see what comes out of the depths in terms of sentiment pretty quickly. So yeah, it depends. I'm very flexible of mind, as I think we've just demonstrated, of like, look, I really thought this was going to any day now, right? You're going to trade like a neutral reserve asset. Okay. All right, I'm out. And not out, but like, okay, I need to resize my position based on the reality that I'm seeing. And so it's really, there's no one sort of hard and fast thing. It's just having that open-mindedness around, all those things. And it might be, hey, it bleeds up to 110 and 115, and then they like, the technicals look better, and they come out with some event, and it's like, oh crap, I was wrong, and now I got to chase it. And 100,000 Bitcoiners are all going to sit there and dunk on me into it, and that's fine. Like whatever. I'll have been wrong. Great. So it just really, event, price, time, sentiment, there's some, I don't, all of those things kind of factor in to how I think about it.
The Bitcoin community places almost zero weight on a renewal of the trade war with China or a crisis in Japanese government bonds, JGBs. Both events would cause a global scramble for dollars. The one thing Bitcoin isn't. Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space, and drop your comments and observations in the comment section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks, and enjoy the video.